Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Here, our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Mr. Producer, I haven't seen so many lawyers on TV since Perry Mason. Have you? Well, we got defense lawyers, we got former federal prosecutors, we got former judges, all the channels. I mean, I'm losing track. Some of them I've never even heard of before. And I'm guessing the public's getting sick and tired of this case because they know it's a complete farce. They know it's a sham. They know it's a Democrat setup. They know the judge is corrupt. They know the prosecutor's corrupt. People are hoping for a hung jury. I am, for sure. Maybe better, who knows? But also prepared for the worst, just in case. Everybody knows what's going on here. It is a Stalinist show trial. That's exactly what it is. A star chamber is what we used to call it. Rules of evidence are being ignored and trounced. The jury instructions, while everybody's commenting on them, we actually don't have them yet. I suspect he'll give a little to the defense, but in the end, it'll be the wrong kind of jury instructions. I don't know how many lawyers you need to explain this. I really don't. But I just explained it in, 30 seconds, Mr. Producer? Now, as far as Brad Smith goes, 90% of what Brad Smith was going to testify to, he's explained on this program on several occasions. He explained on my Fox show in 2018, 2023, and 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. He's explained in writing. And this is exactly why the judge didn't want him to testify, because he was going to say, in no way in hell is this a crime. And that would have put an end to the whole thing, or as I've said, fired a killer torpedo right into the side of the case. And I've also pointed out that the prosecutor here has committed crimes. He has suborned perjury and you have Brady violations. And it takes, believe it or not, in the legal community, guts to say those things. Some have whispered it. Most won't go there. I go there. I go there because I know what we're up against. I know what we're up against. And in any event, I also know that it needs to be fixed. Otherwise, this will continue. We're going to have Julie Kelly on in the second hour. This morning, she put out a piece that the FBI authorized the use of deadly force during the Mar-A-Lago raid. And we know this because documents were released at the direction of Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida, who appears to me to be a decent, very good judge. And that requires some extensive discussion. We're going to have it with Julie Kelly in the second hour. We're going to go into this. It's not something to blow off. This has not been discussed yet on cable TV, and it needs to be discussed. So we will light a fire under this, and we will listen to the phalanx of lawyers, defense lawyers, former federal prosecutors, former judges, former defense lawyers, maybe former defendants, former plaintiffs. I don't know. We'll get there. But it's very important that we do, and I will talk further about what Brad Smith had said and what he put in posts today as well. ABC News has very strange coverage of what took place in Florida, the release of the documents. On the one hand, they trashed the judge, the last paragraph, by innuendo from the grifters on MSLSD and the Constipated News Network. This judge has been controversial. No, she's not. And then Jack Smith, they missed the point, and I'll get into this. Jack Smith said there could have been other opportunities for obstruction when, in fact, there was an effort to put classified documents back into the secure area, which is why Trump and the others were not charged with additional charges of obstruction, because they were actually trying to do the right thing. But that's missed by ABC News because basically they are partisan hacks and low IQ on top of the rest. At the bottom of the hour, we have a full damn show, boy. But we worked all day on this. That's what we do. We're going to have an exclusive interview with Ron Dermer. Ron Dermer is a member of the War Cabinet. He's probably the closest confidant that Prime Minister Netanyahu has. And he is involved in providing formally national security advice to the Prime Minister and to the Cabinet. He will be coming on the program at the bottom of the hour. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, have you watched the Biden propaganda networks? The word Reich, like Third Reich, or Reich, appeared in a video, you see. The split second that the Trump campaign or PAC put out. And everybody said, including George Stephanopoulos, there he goes, Hitler, Trump. He's saying we need a united Third Reich. We need it. And that was put out first by the Biden campaign, regurgitated by all the media, because that's how it works. But that's not what happened. As our friend at Right Scoop, Brian, points out, the media and Joe Biden went nuts today over a video Trump posted to his Truth Social account, calling it Nazi imagery and more. Biden headquarters put out this statement, and of course Stephanopoulos, CNN, the rest. Speaking of the Third Reich, they put their boots on and they marched in order and they clicked their heels and they goose-stepped all the way behind them. They put out this, Trump posts a new ad foreshadowing a second Trump term that says he will create a, quote, unified Reich, unquote, echoing Nazi Germany. Oh, so this is how Joe Biden hopes to get elected. Joe Biden, who is a fascist. Guess what? As Right Scoop says, they're wrong again. He says, I know it's hard to believe, but as it turns out, they're wrong. And of all websites that pointed this out, and I must give them credit, 1 out of 1,000 times, mediocre-ite. They picked up on this. They said, wait a minute, that's not exactly right. Other parts of the ad featured placeholder text about the European great powers and the digging of trenches next to headlines such as borders closed, 15 million illegal aliens deported, and peace through strength. The placeholder text about, quote, the creation of a unified Reich, unquote, also appeared at the end of the ad underneath the slogan MAGA. So we're at the very, very bottom. While the ad caused an uproar on social media, with President Joe Biden's campaign accusing Trump of echoing Nazi Germany. This is from Media. The controversial text appeared to be leftover placeholder text from a video editing template for Adobe After Effects. That's the name of it, Adobe After Effects. The, quote, newspaper vintage history headlines, unquote, template, which is available to download as part of a subscription service online, includes the same placeholder text, ready, about World War I, which was spotted in Trump's ad. Nothing to do with the Third Reich. And they didn't even put it there purposely. While many are aware of the term Reich in the context, writes Media, of the Nazi Third Reich, the term was also used by the German Empire, the Second Reich, from 1871 until the end of World War I in 1918. So they didn't make the ad. The ad uses a standard Adobe template, and the line wasn't even about the Third Reich, you know, the Nazis, and it probably wasn't even supposed to be in there. But guess who that didn't stop, writes Right Scoop. Just doesn't matter if it's true. It only matters if they want to say it's true. Even when you're right, they find a way to still say you're wrong and evil. I even got emails today from family and friends. Look at this. You always have to step back. You need to be extremely cautious. Do not follow the propagandists, the Hamas propagandists, the Hitler Youth propagandists, the Marxist propagandists. Do not follow them, ever. On the other side, you have Anthony Blinken and Biden. You have our UN deputy representative. You have them all putting out condolences that the president of Iran and his sidekick, the foreign minister, died in a helicopter crash. Putting out condolences, officially, the United States government. This guy was called the Butcher of Tehran when the revolution occurred, quote unquote. He was responsible for overseeing the slaughter. The estimate is 15,000 people. Most people think more. The most vicious, vile overseer of murder, rape, torture. And we put out our condolences. Building nuclear missiles aimed at our cities. Funding the terrorist organizations all around the world. But our friend Matt Lee, Mr. Producer, at AP, been around a long time, he would have none of it. So he questions the State Department mouthpiece. Hat tip, right scoop, cut one, go.
Then can I just ask you about the state? What exactly is official condolences?
It's a condolences on behalf of the United States government.
Well, then why doesn't it say that? This is like official condolences means absolutely nothing, and I'm not even sure why you're offering condolences if this guy was as bad as you say he was.
Look,
why? I mean,
because we regret any loss of life. We don't want to see people die in helicopter crashes. It doesn't change our view of him, our view of the regime.
But I'll say one person that you can think of that the United States didn't want to see in an air accident.
There were people on board that aircraft who have families. We thought that's an appropriate step to take. It's the step that the United States government has taken when any number of foreign leaders with whom we had vehement disagreements have died. But we also made clear in that statement that we continue to support the Iranian people in their fundamental struggle for freedom.
Really, well, I would just point out to you that when one of the former presidents of Cuba died, this would be Fidel Castro, one of your predecessors, did not offer any condolences. And basically said good riddance.
So I will.
And if you really think that Raisi was as bad as what you have laid out at the beginning, I'm just a little bit curious as to why you would put a statement out, no matter how short it is, but with the line official condolences in it. I don't get it.
As long as we're addressing the historical record, the United States offered condolences when Hugo Chavez died, when Joseph Stalin died, people with whom we had great disagreements.
Wow, you're in great company there, pal. Really good. Go ahead.
An ally of the United States all through, and we talked about this earlier, all through World War II.
He did not die during World War II. He died afterwards when our disagreements with him were quite clear and quite plain and quite well articulated by the United States government. It is a step that the United States takes, recognizing that people have families, and in no way at all undermining our fundamental view of the Iranian regime and its crimes against its own people and our support for the Iranian people.
So the Biden administration gives official condolences to a mass murderer who's also involved in and responsible for the mass murder of Jews in Israel. But the mass murder of people in Yemen, the mass murder of people in Syria, the mass murder of people in the Gaza Strip, and the mass murder of his own people. Because other people were on the plane. That's not what they said. We gave condolences to the family. They said condolences to the butcher of Tehran. And they go after Donald Trump because the word Reich is in a video that even Mediaite says, wait a minute, he's not endorsing the Third Reich. And they go through the technology and how that actually happened and appeared, but the media didn't stop there, did they? No. Now, Mr. Producer, I don't have it in front of me, but I want to quickly move to the questioning of Blinken in front of, where do we have that here? I have it here somewhere. We've got 1 minute. Let's go to cut 2. Go.
I'm telling you.
You know, yesterday the State Department issued a statement mourning the death of the Iranian president. Now, I assume as Secretary you share that sentiment?
We expressed official condolences, as we've done when countries, adversaries, enemies or not, have lost leaders. It changes nothing about the fact that Mr. Raisi was engaged in reprehensible conduct, including repressing his own people for many years as a judge. And that as president, it changes not a whit about our policy, but it's something that we've done many times in the past, going back many administrations and many decades, and we do as a normal course of business.
Well, I don't think it should be a normal course of business. I think it's shocking that this administration would mourn the death of the butcher of Tehran. I don't. He's responsible for death, rape, torture, a sworn enemy of the free world. So I think it's a terrible mistake.
But he didn't. You see, you don't understand. It's Trump. Trump's Hitler. I've got more. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, folks, China, Russia, Iran, they're all on the move. Right here in the U.S., you've got inflation, you have open borders, and, of course, an election year. Oh, and we just crossed over $34 trillion in debt with no signs of slowing down. It's time to wake up, folks. There's a lot at risk, possibly even your retirement account. The time to protect yourself is before a crisis, not after. Advantage Gold, the gold and silver company I recommend to help Americans. Well, they'll help you prepare now for times just like these. Call them at 800-900-8000 today. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. Call Advantage Gold today. Here's the number, 800-900-8000. Plus, see if you qualify to get your special discount worth up to $1,300 today, 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. There's a lot of non-repetitive information I want to get to in the Trump trial and beyond with Julie Kelly in the second hour. In a few moments, we'll have Ron Dermer with us, top aide to the Prime Minister of Israel. But in the meantime, Blinken and Ted Cruz. Cut 4, go.
Senator Barrasso asked you about Ibrahim Raisi. Your State Department put out a statement sending condolences for his death. Mr. Secretary, is the world better today now that Raisi is dead?
Given the horrible acts that he engaged in, both as a judge and as president, to the extent he can no longer engage in them, yes, the Iranian people are probably better off.
You didn't say that in your statement, did you?
I believe that we did. And certainly our spokesperson...
Today, the United Nations is flying their flag at half-staff to mourn the death. Would you agree that it is utterly disgraceful for the United Nations to be mourning the deaths of the butcher of Tehran?
We're certainly not mourning his death.
Yes, the answer is yes, a-hole. I'll be right back. You know, folks, we've got an awful lot swirling around this country, both internally and externally. We've got wars going on in all parts of the world. We've got riots effectively going on in our colleges and universities. We have inflation through the roof. It's an election year to boot. All these problems are often huge tailwinds for gold, which is why gold is at all-time highs, looking like it's going to go higher. And when it comes to gold, I only trust my friends at Advantage Gold. They help Americans just like you protect your retirement accounts and help safeguard your wealth through diversification. So call them right now. 800-900-8000. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit plus a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. Call Advantage Gold right now. 800-900-8000. See if you qualify to get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 today. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Welcome back, America. We're here with Ron Dermer. He's the Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs, a very close confidant of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And I must confess, one of my best friends, to be perfectly honest with you. This family and our family, very, very tight. And Ron Dermer, I didn't know that the elected Israeli government, the democracy in Israel, was full of all these criminals, where the arrest warrants are issued by this radical, left-wing, anti-Jewish European concoction that was created after World War II in part to protect the Jews. Can you tell us what's going on here, sir?
Yeah, but tell me how you feel about it, Mark.
Exactly.
Frankly, you're right. You got a rogue prosecutor there, and you might have a kangaroo court on your hands, and it's really shameful. I would say that the decision yesterday to try to issue arrest warrants against, and judges will have to confirm that, against the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli Defense Minister was both outrageous and dangerous. It's outrageous, obviously, because of the false equivalence. You bring charges against Hamas, a genocidal terror organization, and its leaders, and charges against the leaders of the Democratic State of Israel. So you're bringing charges against those who perpetrated the most savage attack on Jews since the Holocaust, murdering 1,200 people, taking 250 people hostage, raping women, burning babies, the worst crimes that you can possibly think about, and then go to Gaza and embed themselves in the civilian population in mosques and schools and hospitals. And on the one hand, you're putting them in the dock, and then you take Israel, the leaders of Israel, which is a stand-in for the people of Israel and the army of Israel, who is going and fighting this terror organization in ways that no other army in the history of the world, and certainly the history of urban warfare, has ever done to get civilians out of harm's way. And you're putting them on the same moral plane. It's like having the Nuremberg trials and getting, the Nazi criminals there. And, yeah, we're going to have also Churchill and FDR in the dock. This is absolutely absurd. But beyond that, it's the false charges. It's not just the false equivalence between Hamas and Israel. It's the charges itself. It's utter libel. The main charge that the ICC prosecutor has brought forward, and you know something about prosecution, is that Israel is willfully starving, has a policy of trying to starve the population in Gaza. This is absurd. I'm a member of the War Cabinet. From the beginning of the war, we have had a policy of enabling humanitarian assistance to go into Gaza. There have been over 20,000 trucks of food, around 30,000 trucks overall, something like 500,000 tons of humanitarian assistance, including 400,000 tons of food. The IDF has been paving roads to get these trucks to come in. We've been opening passages as Hamas is firing on those passages and stealing the humanitarian assistance. And we're the ones that are being accused of war crimes, and they're also accusing us of deliberately targeting civilians, which is outrageous. As I said, we're taking action no other military has ever taken. That's just not what we say. That's what John Spencer at the Urban Warfare Institute at West Point says. That's what General David Petraeus says. Nobody has ever taken this action. We're dealing with this subterranean terror tunnel network with a terror organization that beds themselves in these civilian areas, and yet we're doing everything to get the civilians out of harm's way, dropping leaflets, making phone calls, millions and millions. We've just, as we're speaking right now, around 950,000 people have been evacuated from Rafah as we go to finish off Hamas there. So it's not just a false equivalence between Israel and Hamas, it's that the whole charge, the whole rap sheet is utterly false. But beyond being outrageous, it is dangerous, and it's dangerous for two reasons. The first reason, it is a threat to democracies everywhere. It's not just about Israel. It's any democracy that's fighting terrorists. Now the terrorists are going to think we've achieved a great victory because you know what? You can embed yourself in civilian areas, use your population as human shields, and the ICC will be on your side. So this will start with Israel, but it will not end with Israel. Remember, they were trying to bring up your soldiers for war crimes charges and actions in Afghanistan, your brave men and women of the United States military. They're going to come back and they're going to try to issue arrest warrants against American soldiers and American leaders. I guarantee you that's going to happen. It's Israel first, and America's going to be next. The second reason why it's dangerous is because it's going to fuel anti-Semitism around the world. You've seen this explosion of anti-Semitic hate against Jews. You have it on the American college campuses. This guy, this prosecutor, this rogue prosecutor, is now pouring fuel on this fire, and it is very, very dangerous because people think, ICC, it's a legitimate institution, right? It's an international criminal court. There must be some basis to this. Well, he just brands Israeli leaders and really the country of Israel with a scarlet letter, WC war criminal, and puts that on our breasts. And what do you think is going to happen now on these campuses? All of these people who hate Israel, hate America, hate Jews are going to feel they got wind in their sails to continue what they're doing. I think it is incredibly dangerous, and I'm very glad that a lot of members of the Senate and members of the House, and if the president said it was outrageous, I hope there will be a bipartisan bill that will slap sanctions on these people. The Trump, as you recall, an executive order for sanctions against the ICC when it was your soldiers in the dock. Hopefully they will turn that executive order in some kind of legislation. It will get bipartisan support and send a very strong message to the ICC.
Now, Ron Dermer, Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs, part of the War Cabinet in Israel. I'm just curious, did the prosecutor's office gather any information that perhaps Israel may have been able to provide? I mean, did he take a visit to Gaza? Did he take a visit to the Nova Festival area? Did he gather facts on the ground?
He actually came here 3 or 4 months ago, was invited by some of the hostage families and looked at certain things that happened on our side of the border. He was supposed to come to Israel in a week from now. And we said, look, we're prepared to do an engagement with you. Frankly, they have no jurisdiction over the state of Israel. We are not signatories of the court. Neither is the United States. Now, a lot of people are talking about Palestinian state. Yes, no. Should he have it? Should he not have it? Is this the right time? Well, guess what? The ICC basically has determined that the Palestinians are a state. That's what they think gives them the jurisdiction to deal with some of these crimes. So they have no jurisdiction over this issue. But even though they have no jurisdiction, we said, listen, if you want to come and you want to look at Israel's legal system, its court system, one of the most independent, if not the most independent in the world, you want to look at how we prosecute different allegations, by all means. And he was supposed to come next week. He committed to American senators, to the White House, to the State Department. He said, listen, I'm not rushing to judgment here. I'm going to have a process of engagement with Israel. It could be weeks, maybe even months before we make any decision. He hoodwinked everybody. He didn't come to Israel. He just decided, I'm going to have a press conference now. I'm going to defame Israel. It is based on total false allegations of willful starvation and targeting innocents. And he's basically bought into a lot of the baseless allegations and lies against Israel, and it's a modern-day blood libel. That's why the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, was right, that he's going to take his place alongside these great modern anti-Semites, those infamous judges of Germany that sat there and donned their fancy robes and enabled all the rights to be taken from the Jews as they were on their way to the death camps. This is what this person is doing. He is trying to shackle Israel, to deny us our ability to defend ourselves. It's very nice. Everyone says Israel has the right to defend it. But when we exercise that right, now Israel's moral army, the people of Israel who are fighting this just war with just means, now we're going to be hauled in the dock. They're denying us the basic right of self-defense. One thing I can assure you, and I can assure all your listeners who I know are huge supporters of Israel, this will fail. We will prosecute this war until the war is won.
Isn't the truth, Ron Dermer, that if Israel didn't care about civilian casualties, this war could have been ended in a matter of months? But in fact, debates go on in your cabinet, debates go on in your society, debates go on among allies and so forth on how to conduct this, how to make sure you as few citizens as possible are harmed and so forth and so on. It's not a matter of the capacity of Israel to blow this town or that town off the face of the earth, Israel's debating most of the time on how to protect the civilians while it's trying to protect its own civilians.
That's correct, and we always uphold the laws of war, humanitarian laws as well. And we have, from the beginning of this war, we have a system like you have your JAGs, and we have legal people in all of our IDF processes. When you have targets, you have to have distinction and separate the civilians, the combatants from the non-combatants. You have to have proportionality. You have to have precautions. That's why John Spencer, a guy from West Point who teaches urban warfare, says, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen a country go to such great lengths to get the civilians out of harm's way. And we also put all this humanitarian assistance in from the beginning of the war. Now, this has not been without controversy in Israel. A lot of people in Israel says, why are we doing this? These people are holding our hostages. They're in the dungeons of Gaza, deep underground, holding women and children and completely innocent people. And after they savagely murdered Israelis on October 7th, why are we abiding by these laws of war? Because that's what we do in Israel. And it's been, I wouldn't say it's a very popular position, but the Prime Minister committed from the beginning of this war to enable humanitarian assistance to reach those people in need in Gaza and to fight the way we always fight, which is to get the civilians out of harm's way. And instead of actually giving a prize to the IDF for the way we fight our wars, instead of commending Israel for the way it fights a war, now Israel is being condemned and is being put in the dock. I mean, it is a complete moral aversion and a total travesty of justice. And I hope that any of your listeners, if there's members of Congress, members of the Senate who are thinking about what to do, I'm telling them and telling everybody, it's going to be Israel first and America next. And that's why there has to be a very strong stance against this. I hope it will be broadly bipartisan to push back against it, because it's going to be American troops that they're going to try to do this. You got these unelected judges on a court that has no jurisdiction in Israel. They're going to do the same thing to America. And I guarantee you that's going to happen. And I think what we need to do is show it can happen. The United States is going to take very forceful action. I think senators warned him before. I think Senator Cotton had actually put out a pretty strong statement yesterday and said, I look forward to him never setting foot, the prosecutor in the United States again, taking action against him. I think that's what's needed to do now, frankly. And I think what may happen from this is, if strong action is taken at the prosecutors against the prosecutor, if leading countries in the world had made statements against this, Britain, Germany, and others, then it won't be Israel that will be in the dock. It won't be Israel that will be turned into the pariah state like this, what the prosecutor wants to do. It'll be the prosecutor himself. And maybe these judges will stand for 10 minutes and actually protect the credibility of this court. Because if not, it's going to go right down the drain. This is what happened to the UN General Assembly in 1975. They passed this ridiculous resolution, Zionism is racism, and no one took them seriously again. It's what happened to the Human Rights Council, that passes more bills against Israel than all the world countries, resolutions against Israel than all the world countries combined. They give a pass to the North Koreas and the Syrians and the Iranians and these gross human rights violations, and they just target Israel. Well, you know what it is when you target Israel, when you target the one and only Jewish state? You single it out and you treat it differently than any other nation in the world. There's a word for that, Mark. It's called anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism is back, and this guy just poured fuel on the fires. And that's why it is such a travesty and so dangerous. And we appreciate the strong support we have, at least in the United States.
It's interesting, Ron Dermer, how they picked Israel out of all the countries to focus on here. Not Iran, not North Korea, not China, not Venezuela, not Cuba. Not a list of horribles where people are being slaughtered, where people are being rounded up, where people are never heard of again, where there is no civil rights, there's no concern about civilians. It's interesting that they pick Israel cherry pick it out of all these other countries. Doesn't that further underscore your point about they're really just Jew-hating at this point?
Yeah, well, in this theater of the absurd, you mentioned Venezuela. This guy actually went to Venezuela. And he's now on a path of saying that Venezuela has this legal principle, which you know well, called complementarity, meaning this ICC is never supposed to deal with a case when a country's legal system is actually investigating crimes. It's supposed to only deal with cases where there's a breakdown of the country's legal system, which is obviously something we don't have in Israel. But he went to Venezuela, and he met with the head of Venezuela that, by the way, does starve his own people. And he says, well, you know what? We have a path towards complementarity with Venezuela, but you're going after Israel, and a lot of it is based on false reports. I did another interview today, and somebody says, well, look, Cindy McCain said there's full-blown famine in the north. And frankly, before this whole thing happened in the northern part of Gaza, before this happened, I didn't even respond to it. You know why? Because of Senator John McCain, because I knew him. I know this is his wife. She's getting totally wrong and false information. It is full-blown nonsense, what she said. There has not been famine. There is not famine. There is no Israeli policy of starvation. As I said, we're putting masses of humanitarian assistance in. Prices for goods are dropping all over Gaza by about 90% in the last 2 months because supply and demand forces work. The markets don't lie. But they basically created this libel against Israel. People have bought into it. The organizations, the so-called human rights organizations that are working in Gaza are basically manned by Hamas. Just like UNRWA, they use the UN facilities. They actually ship out these lies. People file these reports. It is totally false. I don't know if you paid attention to it, but a couple weeks ago, the UN said, those numbers we had of the casualties in Gaza was like 35,000? Well, 10,000 of them we can't identify. So everybody went out, including senators, and American senators, and they said, there's 75% of the casualties are women and children in Gaza, and they put all these numbers, which come from the Hamas Ministry of Health. Now it turns out that the UN says, 10,000 can't be identified. What is this? This is all a sham. Israel is fighting a genocidal terror organization, and our fight against that organization is your fight. These are people who celebrated 9/11. They will celebrate the destruction of America. And just like you have on those college campuses, all those people that are protesting Israel, they don't have a kind word to say about the United States because they hate America and they hate Israel. It's the same thing that you have here. And I think it's very, very important for free countries, democracies, to stand with Israel in this moment and say, enough is enough. This is a line that you don't cross, and I hope we're going to see very strong action within Congress this week, and I hope the president will support it so that the United States will take a very strong stance on Israel's side against what is an outrage and, frankly, dangerous.
And we, as the American people on this, and we have an obligation to work on this too, and we will on this program as we do all the time. We understand the fate that if Israel doesn't succeed, what happens not just to Israel, but to the United States and the free world. And Ron Dermer, I want to thank you for your time. Please give our best to the Prime Minister and all the people over there who are fighting the good fight. Let me put it that way. God bless you, my friend.
Well, thank you. We know that our victory, which we're going to achieve, is America's victory. All the forces that hate you hate us. We're going to defeat Hamas in Gaza, defeat the Iranian axis, and I think that's going to be good for peace and prosperity in this region in the future. But we have to finish this job, and we will not allow any international organization or any decision around the world to handcuff the state of Israel. 80 years ago, as the Prime Minister said on Holocaust Memorial Day, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago, he said we were totally alone. No one was there to help us. No matter what decision, no matter what pressure is going to be brought to bear, we're going to do whatever we have to do to protect our people. And the war that we are waging will be prosecuted until the war is won, for our sake, for your sake, and for civilization's sake.
And 80% of the American people, by the way, agree with that. God bless you, my friend.
Mark Levin.
All over the world, our enemies are on the move. And in our own country, same thing. Things are tough between rising prices, election issues, a $34 trillion debt. But folks, there is good news. If you're smart, you can use these problems to your advantage. By making the right choices right now, you can keep your retirement money safe and even make more money in this climate. That's where Advantage Gold comes in. They're experts in helping Americans protect their savings with gold and silver. It's called diversification. Call Advantage Gold today, 800-900-8000. They'll send send you a free 2024 gold and silver kit that tells you how to keep your money safe when things are bad. Tell them I sent you, and you may qualify for a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000, 800-900-8000. See if you qualify for that special discount worth up to $1,300. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. You should always consult your financial and tax professionals. You folks realize that this mass murderer who died in the helicopter should be applauded? At least keep their mouths shut in our government, but they give their condolences officially? The Biden administration? The same administration that won't even invite Netanyahu to the White House? The same administration that trashes Netanyahu left and right, openly and behind his back? Gives condolences to the president of Iran, the ex-president of Iran, who slaughtered thousands. He was the lead judge during the revolution, summarily ordering the execution of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Do you understand this? And we gave our condolences. When we come back, the Trump trial and massive new revelations. You got to hear this. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Kudos to Laura Ingraham. Kudos to Laura Ingraham. She's doing a hell of a job. And I've been kind of, Mr. Producer, around the edges saying, I had this unbelievable interview with Bradley Smith like 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, where he laid out the case in plain English for why the federal campaign law doesn't apply to this case. He torpedoed the whole case. And I keep asking, why isn't anybody playing that? They're not playing it on the morning show. They're not playing it in the afternoon shows. They're not playing it in the mid-afternoon news shows. They're not playing it in the evening shows, the prime time. And there's Laura, who just did it. Kudos to Laura Ingraham. Not because of me. I don't say a word. It's because of what Brad Smith said. I've known Brad Smith for decades. When I brought him on my program in 2018, nobody who knew Bradley Smith was, and we began talking about this case in 2018. I just posted it. I brought him back in April 2023 when the indictments were issued. And we said the same thing. He said the same. Nobody's played it. Then I brought him back 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, knowing that this would be crucial, utterly, completely crucial. And on that show, he broke news. He said, I may be an expert witness. And he repeated for the third time how this could not possibly be a federal election offense. And I'm sitting here, Mr. Producer, you've heard me off the air, right? Why isn't anyone playing any of this? The judge has silenced Brad Smith. But I made Brad Smith available to the entire world. Laura Ingraham just did it. And she deserves credit for that. I will not be on live this weekend on Fox. I can't do it. It's Memorial Day weekend. And we take Memorial Day weekend very, very seriously on Life, Liberty, and Levin. So my hands have been tied. And so, again, I want to say credit where credit is due to Laura Ingraham, who did exactly what needed to be done. Because there's Brad Smith on 3 separate occasions, probably totaling what? Over an hour of interviews where he makes the point again and again that this does not commit any kind of a criminal act, period. So rather than just lawyers talking to lawyers or guests talking to lawyers or people interpreting or going to social media and who clicked this and who's... It's like the best evidence rule. There's the guy who said what needed to be said. And now he's added today something very, very important. And we tried to get Brad Smith back on, but he was leaving the country, I think, traveling, right, Mr. Producer? Overseas, and he wanted to come on. Making the point, if you look at the contribution, or I should say the non-disclosure agreement, it was done at a period of time where it wouldn't even have to be reported if it was a campaign expense until December 8th after the election. It was not a campaign expense, as he says over and over again. It has nothing to do with a campaign expense. And then today he reveals partially what he would have testified to. And even if it had been, the so-called contribution would have been made and revealed, I should say, after the election. So it couldn't have possibly influenced the election. There's no case. And that's what the judge did not want the jury to hear. You know who listened to or heard about my interviews with Bradley Smith? Judge Merchan, because he knew what Bradley Smith was going to say. Because he said it, which is why I kept saying, my colleagues, radio, TV, the entire world, play some of it. You don't even have to say where you got it from. He says it right out of his mouth. And so finally it's been done. It's been done. It's very, very important that it be done so people know what kind of a clown this judge is. And I've posted on this judge. And I watch these lawyers, some of whom are outstanding. I'm a big fan of McCarthy and Turley. I'm a big fan of John Yoo and a few others whose names just don't come to mind right now. There are a few others. But I'm not a fan of everybody they're dragging in there. I got to be honest with you. I would have done this. Who cares? You have 100 defense lawyers, you're going to have 120 opinions. I think the defense lawyers in this case have been superb, considering you have a Stalinist judge. And I think this guy's more corrupt than we know. And I think this guy's more conflicted than we know. And he's not done doing his dirty work. I watched one guy today, he's a former Trump lawyer during impeachment. He says, yes, you have to show a willfulness. Hey, that's it. The judge just wanted to... Slow down, pal. Let me tell you what's going to make the difference in this case. The instructions, obviously, but even more than that. One patriot on that jury who understands that it's going to take courage to stand up against the others should the others go the wrong way. Who understands they're going to be trashed by the grifters, the former this and the former that, all over CNN and MSNBC. It's going to take one citizen on that jury with guts to do the right thing and say, hey, look, we've had men and women go to war and they don't come back. We've had people put their necks on the line before. I understand. In New York City, I will be a persona non grata. I understand in my neighborhood, I'll be persona non grata. I understand I will be attacked by the Weissmans and the Tappers and the other lowlifes. I understand that. But what's right is right. There's a presidential election on the line here. There's democracy, the justice system on the line here. And if I have to stand up against the other jurors, if I have to stand up against the prosecutors, if I have to stand up against the judge to do justice, then by God, that's what I'm going to do. And that individual will be celebrated in the history books for all time. For all time. Now, what's the big news? In addition to all this, Donald Trump is right. He's posted on Truth Social, as we do as well. He comes out of this freezer box in this, week 5 or 6 of this hideous, insane Stalinist show trial, this Star Chamber, only to find out that your United States government, that your Department of Injustice, that the Federal Bureau of Insanity, that the rogue, unconstitutional prosecutor, Jack the Ripper Smith, that they combined to give orders to the FBI SWAT team that, in my view, unconstitutionally attacked Mar-a-Lago, the home of a former president. And they were authorized, you ready for this? If necessary, to use deadly force. You got that? That should be tonight's headline. Deadly force? Julie Kelly is really a fantastic journalist, and she'll be on this program. We scheduled her, I guess, late this morning. And she put out this piece, FBI authorized use of deadly force during Mar-a-Lago raid. That's the headline. ABC News found something else. Oh, look at this. There are classified documents the government didn't know about. And they were in Donald Trump's bedroom. So why wasn't Trump charged with obstruction for that? He wasn't. You want to know why? Because they returned them. That's why. There was no obstruction. You idiots. But they can't help themselves. It's the Hamas media. Newly unsealed documents in special counsel Jack Smith's espionage case, writes Julie Kelly, against Donald Trump demonstrate the FBI's plan to use deadly force even if the former president arrived at Mar-a-Lago. An exhibit filed today by Donald Trump in a motion to suppress evidence seized during the FBI's August 2022 raid of Mar-a-Lago revealed shocking new details about the Bureau's plans. And when we come back, Julie Kelly is going to tell you about them in great detail. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We're so fortunate in this country to have a military of men and women who voluntarily lay their lives on the line for us. But when their service ends, transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's why Pure Talk proudly helps support America's Warrior Partnership and their mission to prevent veteran suicide. This is very important. You can join the fight when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and help Pure Talk support this great charity. Remember, Pure Talk was founded by a veteran. Through the end of the month, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Folks, choose a wireless company that shares your values. Upgrade your cell phone service to America's most dependable 5G network. Just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. puretalk.com/LEVIN. Make the switch, folks. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Levin. For superior cell phone service, that's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. And to help Pure Talk help our vets. Welcome back, America. Julie Kelly, who is a very serious reporter. We have enormous respect for her. Julie Kelly, you broke this story of this information that was released today. Tell us what you found.
So, Mark, thanks again for having me on. This is related to, again, Judge Aileen Cannon's crusade to unseal and unredact as much information related to this corrupt case as she possibly can. So this was a motion by Donald Trump to suppress the evidence collected during the Mar-a-Lago raid in August of 2022. One of the exhibits that was attached to that motion is the FBI's what they call operational order related to how the FBI raid would be conducted. And part of this included a policy statement, use of deadly force, attached to this plan that instructs agents how and when they can use deadly force during an FBI raid. And there were other details that were disclosed, also caveats as to how agents should continue if the former president showed up at Mar-a-Lago during the raid. Of course, he was, at the time, his summer residence in Bedminster, how they would negotiate its Secret Service agents resisted the raid. Also a medic that had been embedded in the FBI raid team, and directions as to how to get to a trauma center 18 miles away from Mar-a-Lago if anyone was injured during this raid.
So they were ready for a full-out armed conflict. That's what you're telling me.
This is what the documents released today indicate. And this was noted in the motion to suppress the evidence during the Mar-a-Lago raid. They have many issues with how this raid was conducted, the affidavit, the application for the search warrant, that it was based on false premises and false information. And this is part of it, just disclosing how the FBI prepared to conduct this armed 9-hour raid of Mar-a-Lago, which also disclosed today, Mark, that agents rifled through, this is not a joke, I know people say, oh, Melania's underwear drawer. There are several exhibits that indicate that agents were in Melania's private suite taking photographs of I don't know what, but there's dozens of entries in the FBI's photographical log of what happened. They also went through a child's room. We can only assume that it's Barron's room. So what exactly were these 30-plus armed FBI agents, also an official from the DOJ counterintelligence unit, also an individual from the FBI headquarters? What were they doing? What were they looking for, Mark? They weren't looking for papers that had classified markings on them. The entire premise for all of this, as we've known, is a lie. It was about optics. And it could be, some speculate, looking for Donald Trump's copies of the Crossfire Hurricane records. But this is egregious. It's mind-blowing. And I'll tell you what, Mark, there are people out there actually defending this. Former federal prosecutors and former FBI agents who say, well, of course, this is standard operating procedure to have a deadly force guidance included in this plan. There's no defense of this, Mark.
Against the former president? There's plenty of that. There's plenty of precedent. There's no precedent. And Julie Kelly, just so the American people understand, as somebody who worked as chief of staff to an attorney general, he would never have authorized the FBI or the U.S. attorney or special counsel to go into a court and to seek a warrant in the first place. He would have picked up the damn phone. He would have called, let's say it was Biden, and said, look, give us the stuff. I'm under pressure, something like that. They took no middle steps, even though they pretend they did. And look at what they could have created here. And I want to say this to you as well. ABC News says the big story here, Julie, is that there were other classified documents in the bed. Who cares? He turned them over. Who cares? The same Department of Justice that has mishandled the very classified documents for which Donald Trump is being prosecuted, right?
Correct. So we now know, and you and I talked about this last week, is that Jack Smith had to come out and confess to Judge Cannon and the court that the FBI investigators mishandled evidence collected after the raid. They told the court that all of the evidence was in the proper sequence, the initial sequence that it was after the raid. That is not the case. Furthermore, they brought those cover sheets that you and I talked about, the cover sheets that they planted on top of who knows what files, to take that infamous picture that made it look like Trump was hoarding all these classified documents and wasn't turning them over. That was also part of this raid. And Jack Smith also had to admit that the placeholder sheets that they put when they had to take out an alleged classified document that they found at Mar-a-Lago, that those placeholder sheets, some of them, they can't match up with the classified documents that they took out of these boxes. And so ABC News, now we're supposed to be concerned that the FBI claims that there were other papers found throughout Mar-a-Lago that
for which, by the way, for which President Trump was in charge with obstruction on those, and yet ABC leads with that. I've got multiple questions to ask you. Please hold on. Julie Kelly, great reporter. You can find her piece. We're linking to it right now. But also she writes, where is it, Mr. Producer? It's Substack. We'll be right back. We're so fortunate in this country to have a military of men and women who voluntarily lay their lives on the line for us. But when their service ends, transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's why Pure Talk proudly helps support America's Warrior Partnership and their mission to prevent veteran suicide. This is very important. You can join the fight when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and help Pure Talk support this great charity. Remember, Pure Talk was founded by a veteran. Through the end of the month, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Folks, choose a wireless company that shares your values. Upgrade your cell phone service to America's most dependable 5G network. Just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. puretalk.com/LEVIN. Make the switch, folks. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Levin. For superior cell phone service, that's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. And to help Pure Talk help our vets.
Classy, conservative fire. The Mark Levin Show. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
We're with Julie Kelly, who's just fantastic. There's really nobody who's covering this. January 6th, the Trump cases, particularly the federal cases, the document January 6th case like she is. Julie Kelly, you looked at these documents that were released. Again, as an old Justice Department official, you have a Justice Department that's used to handling millions and tens of millions of pages of documents in big antitrust cases. I remember the IBM case, the AT&T case, you had the Microsoft case. They have systems set up. They have individuals who have a full-time job to track the documents, to mark the documents. They have places in the Department of Justice, a big vault room where we put documents and so forth and so on. Here you have a case of a former president of the United States who's running for president, and your case focuses on these documents. And the idea that these were accidentally mishandled or we didn't have the right people handling them and it's just cover sheets, I don't believe it for 2 seconds. Does it make sense to you?
None of it makes sense. Of course not. This was all a stunt. It was a stunt for publicity to make it look like Donald Trump was a criminal. So they had all the optics of the FBI raid that he's hoarding nuclear secrets. He's going to share them with our country's enemies, that he obstructed the investigation. Then we know that they added these props, these cover sheets. We know now that they rummaged through Melania's room and Barron's room. And they ended up with what? 102, they say, papers with classified markings. But now we realize this could have really escalated to a dangerous situation. If President Trump had gone to Mar-A-Lago with news that the FBI was there raiding his residence, they had contingencies as to how the FBI agents were supposed to conduct themselves. What if the Secret Service would have resisted the armed FBI agents' raid of a former president's home? What would have happened then? So now we have more, your imagination can go wild. Mm-hmm. We're lucky, and obviously Donald Trump and his family and the staffers at Mar-a-Lago. Mark, they actually had plans how to go door to door. That's what they said, door to door at Mar-a-Lago, the guest rooms there, to interrogate guests for what? Classified documents? So what really was this all about? And this is why it's so important and so courageous of Judge Cannon to be releasing and posting these unsealed files now. She actually today authorized the unsealing of 10 more motions from earlier in the case. I will be at the courthouse tomorrow, Mark, for a hearing on Walt Nauta, Trump's longtime personal aide, who's also a co-defendant, his motion to dismiss based on selective and vindictive prosecution. Because we also know, Mark, thank you to Judge Cannon, that Walt Nauta's attorney was threatened by Jay Bratt, the DOJ's lead prosecutor, that he would torpedo the lawyer's judicial nomination if he did not successfully get Walt Nauta, a longtime aide, a naval veteran, to flip on Trump and cooperate with the government.
And that's never been resolved, has it? It's never been resolved.
I think it'll be part of the hearing tomorrow. And Jay Bratt will be there, and so will Stanley Woodward, well, not his attorney.
Stan Woodward is the lawyer who has said that this guy threatened him with his judgeship, potential judgeship. Now, that, of course, would be a crime. And he stays on the Jack Smith staff and so forth and so on. And this judge is being attacked even tonight by ABC News. In the last paragraph, she's controversial. Legal experts question her. No, she's not controversial. And these aren't legal experts. They're former a-holes. They're on the left. They're on CNN and MSNBC. Quite frankly, some of the lawyers that, we hear on our own friendly network attacking this judge who's actually playing it straight, isn't she?
She is single-handedly, Mark, taking all the slings and arrows. There is a woman in prison for making legitimate death threats against Aileen Cannon. But she is a lone wolf, a woman who is exposing all of the dirtiness, all the corruption, all the sloppiness of this case. And very few people are sticking up for her. I think that they will now. But to your point, all we see from the media are calls for her recusal, that she's compromised, and she has no business presiding over this case. There were two more interesting things that came out today, Mark, and I posted it also at Twitter, @Julie_Kelly too. Snippets
and by the way, Mr. Producer, let's link to that because she needs to have these articles read as widely as possible. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. So also part of the disclosure today was snippets from a grand jury proceeding. Now, Mark, you know this as an attorney. This was not happening during an FBI interview. Mm-hmm. One of DOJ's thugs, Julie Edelstein, is pressuring Tim Parlatore, one of Trump's lawyers at the time, in front of a D.C. grand jury. Of course, none of this should have happened in D.C. Florida was the proper jurisdiction, but they conducted all of the investigation in D.C. so they could get whatever they wanted out of a D.C. grand jury, same people who sit on a regular jury, pressuring him to violate attorney-client privilege and tell this grand jury about private conversations he had with the former president. And he obviously pushed back on her efforts to do that, but she hinted that somehow there was a crime that he was covering up because he would not disclose to the grand jury these private privileged communications. Also, what Donald Trump's team argued today is that David Ferrero, who was the archivist at the time, Obama appointee, started concocting a documents crime against Donald Trump the minute he left the Oval Office, dating back to January 20th, 2021. This is something else that Judge Cannon next month, in a series of 3 days of hearings, will consider publicly these accusations and evidence of collusion between the archives, the Biden White House, including the General Counsel's Office, the DOJ, FBI, and other entities in 2021 to concoct and manufacture some sort of documents, probably it looked like documents destruction case against Donald Trump.
There's so much evil and diabolical activity with this guy, Jack Smith. And, of course, the question of his appointment is a very, very serious question. That is, under the appointments, this is my bailiwick, the appointments clause of the Constitution, when somebody has this kind of enormous power to conduct an investigation, to use the resources of the taxpayer, the Department of Justice, to have an unlimited number of investigators, FBI agents, paralegals, IT experts, and so forth and so on. You can't just pull anybody from The Hague or from the street, any lawyer and so forth. This is an individual that had to go through the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Senate, be nominated and confirmed for this kind of what is considered a presidential position. The Attorney General of the United States had the ability to pick a sitting U.S. attorney, the way Bob Barr picked a sitting U.S. attorney as his special counsel. But you can't go around the appointments clause of the Constitution and say, oh, I got a real good hunter here, a real good hitman who's got a real good history of cutting corners and going around and under the law, and I want him, and say he's going to be my special counsel. You don't get to trump the Constitution. So this is being challenged in Florida. full disclosure, the Landmark Legal Foundation, of which I am chairman, but under the great tutelage of our president there, Pete Hutchison, they put together a killer brief by one of the greatest experts in the world on the appointments clause, and that's in front of the judge as well, correct?
Correct. And again, to Judge Aileen Cannon's credit, this would not be happening in Judge Chutkin's courtroom in Washington, D.C. We know that. Judge Cannon just ordered a hearing on June 21st to hear exactly what you're saying, the unlawful appointment of Jack Smith that was first filed as an amici in the Supreme Court by former Attorney General Ed Meese. So on June 21st, Jack Smith and his team will have to defend themselves before this motion to dismiss based on the unlawful appointment of Jack Smith. And then that following, after that weekend, 3 days of hearings related to the collusion between these entities, including the Biden White House that I just discussed. She is putting Jack Smith and the DOJ on trial. And this is the sort of courageous work that we don't see from any other judge except for her. And she is the one really who should be commended for making all of this public, because she really wants the American people to see what has happened in this investigation and prosecution.
To further elaborate just a little on what you just said, we now have two former attorneys general, Edwin Meese and Mukasey, Mike Mukasey, both of whom have signed a brief with two brilliant law professors, one of whom is an old friend of mine, Stephen Calabrese, and Gary Locke. These are top-of-the-line, brilliant constitutional scholars, two former attorneys general, and, of course, Landmark Legal. But in terms of the attack on this is not just some kook attack. This is a serious, serious challenge to the appointment. And it's, Julie Kelly makes the point. There's not another judge who's hearing any of these cases who would even look at this. Chutkin's a joke, an absolute joke. She is basically in my view, Julie Kelly, the Juan Merchan of the January 6th case, where she basically rubber stamps everything the prosecution wants, no?
Oh, she absolutely was. I mean, as you know, that case has been on indefinite hold since December, but she is the one who authored the history-making ruling that presidents are not immune from criminal prosecution. That is the question now before the Supreme Court, and as you know, that's the brief that Ed Meese filed, saying the court shouldn't even consider this because it originated from Jack Smith, who was unlawfully appointed. And Clarence Thomas, actually, during oral arguments, asked Trump's defense attorneys if they made Jack's unlawful appointment part of their briefing in the immunity question. They had not. But that has now percolated over into the classified documents case, motion to dismiss based on his unlawful appointment. Judge Cannon is going to vet that publicly next month.
So at some point, that's going to the Supreme Court, no matter how she rules, because somebody will appeal, go to the circuit court or emergency appeal to the Supreme Court. Between you and me, President Trump's lawyers should have included that, in my humble opinion. Julie Kelly, God bless you, my friend. Excuse me. Keep up the great work, and you're always welcome here.
Will do. I'll be back in the courthouse tomorrow. People can follow my live reporting on Twitter, Julie_Kelly 2, and then I'll be posting this on my Substack. Mark, thank you so much for always having me on and covering my work.
Well, Julie, that live reporting, Mr. Producer, let's put that link up there, too. God bless you, Julie. Take care of yourself. She is fantastic, and she deserves support. Really, really does. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We're so fortunate in this country to have a military of men and women who voluntarily lay their lives on the line for us. But when their service ends, transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's why Pure Talk proudly helps support America's Warrior Partnership and their mission to prevent veteran suicide. This is very important. You can join the fight when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and help Pure Talk support this great charity. Remember, Remember, Pure Talk was founded by a veteran. Through the end of the month, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Folks, choose a wireless company that shares your values. Upgrade your cell phone service to America's most dependable 5G network. Just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. puretalk.com/LEVIN. Make the switch, folks. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Levin. For superior cell phone service that's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. And to help Pure Talk help our vets. My goodness. The crazy people on the left. And this is what I meant by ABC News attacking Judge Cannon. At the very end, they write, the filing was just one among multiple exhibits ordered unsealed Tuesday by the district judge overseeing Trump's case, Aileen Cannon, who has set up a controversial process opposed by special counsel Smith that has enabled Trump's attorneys to make public evidence in the case that would typically remain under seal. Let me ask you something. If you're a news organization, don't you want the information public, Mr. Producer? You would think, wouldn't you, America? You're a news organization, and you're whining about a judge where you're supposed to have public trials with public evidence. They're complaining, ABC News, that she's controversial because she's following the Constitution. What Jack Smith wants, another Star Chamber, is not constitutional, involving a former president and a candidate for president, Donald Trump. Here's their last paragraph. The filing was just one among multiple exhibits ordered unsealed, as I said. Some legal experts have criticized Cannon. This is the way the media trash people. Some legal experts have criticized Cannon over a series of recent rulings that have benefited Trump's strategy to have the case delayed until after the 2024 election, including an order 2 weeks ago that put an indefinite hold on her scheduling a date for the trial. So in other words, because she won't accommodate the trial demands of the government to hurry up and get this done before the election, rather than do justice, rather than consider the motions, rather than follow the law and the Constitution, she's controversial. What a bunch of a-holes. ABC News, you're a disgusting disgrace, but then again, you know it.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Serious matter, as they all seem to be. Joe Biden. I'm going to read something to you, and this is serious. And it still amazes me, I guess, that there's really no media deep dive into Joe Biden's mental health. I mean, that's a major issue, everything else aside. Is he mentally capable of being president of the United States? Now, you and I know he's not. But then you have liars, fools, and phonies like Joe Scarborough and others who pretend that he can, and he does. I want to read something to you. In The Democrat Party Hates America, my last book, I told you that Joe Biden was in the 5th stage of 7 stages of dementia. He's now in the 6th stage. Where do I get this from? I get this from the science. I'll give you an example, and this is in multiple places. SeniorServicesOfAmerica.com. What is dementia? And by the way, I'm not one of these people that think it's funny or that Alzheimer's is funny. It's not funny. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. To watch somebody deteriorate in front of your eyes, family member, is horrendous. And there's really no medical solution at this point. They can slow it down, perhaps, but there's a lot of money being spent by pharmaceutical companies, a lot of tests being run, a lot of whatever, but it's not bearing much fruit right now. Dementia comes in many different forms and affects the cognitive functioning of a person as they age, including their thinking, remembering, and reasoning to the point where it interferes with their daily life. Most commonly, dementia affects older people. Approximately 1/3 of people over 85 years have some form of dementia. However, it's not considered a normal part of growing old. Being aware of the various signs and symptoms of dementia can help you quickly identify if you or a loved one may become affected by this cognitive illness. Now, Alzheimer's and dementia have a distinction, but I don't need to get into that for these purposes. They're both horrendous. What are the 7 stages of dementia? Now, I'm reading you this, and not a single news organization in America has dared to even address this. I don't understand why it's important. It's important when we decide who we're going to select as president or senator or congressman or governor, but it's also important in people's daily lives to be aware of this. Dementia is most often diagnosed using a global scale that assesses the varying stages of memory loss and the ability of the brain to function properly. If you're wondering what the 7 stages of vascular dementia are, or most other forms of dementia, there is a general way to find out. Now, this scale, the Global Deterioration Scale for Assessment of Primary Degenerative Dementia, GDS, identifies the 7 stages of dementia and is proven to be the most useful test for specifically diagnosing Alzheimer's disease. It can also be helpful for other forms of dementia diagnoses as well. If you or someone you love is suffering from dementia, you might consider moving them and so forth to an assisted living facility. Now, what are the stages? Stage 1. No cognitive decline. Stage 1 is extremely mild and really undetectable. There are no signs of memory loss, poor cognitive functions, or unusual behaviors. Stage 2, very mild cognitive decline. During stage 2, slow cognitive decline typically begins. However, the symptoms may not be obvious to anyone other than the person experiencing them. In stage 2, the most common symptom is forgetfulness, which might be easy to ignore as a symptom of dementia. Stage 3, mild cognitive decline. In this stage, cognitive decline becomes more noticeable to both the person experiencing symptoms and outsiders. In stage 3, common symptoms include forgetfulness, decreased work performance, difficulty speaking, difficulty focusing on normal tasks. Now there's stage 4, early stage moderate decline dementia. Stage 4 is well known as early dementia, marked by the onset of moderate cognitive decline, and most often, patients experience stage 4 symptoms for as long as 10 years. Early dementia symptoms include, that stage 4, clear signs of forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, easily losing track of time and place, difficulty managing finances, afraid of being alone, traveling, new places and things, difficulty in social situations, withdrawing from family and friends. Stage 5, and this is where I put Joe Biden 8 or 9 months ago, maybe 10 months ago. Moderately severe dementia. Remember, there's 7 stages. Stage 5 is known as middle dementia, where the symptoms are easily identified. Patients in middle dementia require full-time assistance to complete daily living activities. As middle dementia approaches, patients and loved ones might consider moving to a memory care living facility to ensure proper care and that cognitive needs are being met. A major symptom of middle dementia is the loss of short-term memory. And so I posited in my book that Biden was at stage 5, and now I believe he's progressed to stage 6, mid-stage severe dementia. During stage 6, the symptoms of middle dementia begin to worsen. The person suffering may begin to have trouble recalling close friends and family, mixing up a sister and a friend and the names of people he's known for decades, experience delusions, compulsions, anxiety, or agitation. You can see his anger and his moods. Everybody has anger and moods, but not like this. Experience frequent and intense personality or emotional changes, have difficulty speaking or communicating, lose bladder control. I surmise he has lost bladder control. Look, I don't know. I don't say this as a joke. But it's also why I think you rarely see him standing up in front of a press corps or anywhere else for a long period of time, or where they clearly shuffle him off the stage as quickly as they can. I believe Joe Biden's in stage 6 dementia. And the friendly media don't even want to pursue this, don't even want to look at this. But stage 7 is late stage, very severe dementia. It's considered late dementia. It's identified by severe cognitive decline. Patients in late dementia need around-the-clock care because they cannot complete simple daily tasks like communicating or walking on their own. How long do the 7 stages of dementia last? If you're wondering how long they last, there's no clear-cut answer. Stages 1 and 2 are difficult to identify for the average person. Early dementia, that's 3, 4, hits patients. They tend to stay in each stage for about 2 years before progressing to the next one. Some stages can last longer. Stage 3 can last up to 7 years, while others might be a bit shorter. Stage 6 can last around a year or less. There are 7 signs of dementia. Each stage where signs present themselves can last for different lengths of period. There's no known, equation. And so you got different measures: memory, orientation, judgment, problem solving, home and hobbies, and so forth. And you need neurological evaluations. They'll check different functions: balance, coordination, muscle tone and strength, eye movement, sensory reflexes, speech. There's laboratory testing, complete blood count, blood glucose, urinalysis, toxicology screening, other forms of analysis. And I'm sure Joe Biden has gone through all of that. I think that's why you see the long weekends. That's why you see 40% of the time he's on vacation. That's why they're hiding him, covering him up, writing notes for him. And what is so tawdry about all this is it really is the people around him, including his, including his, they're abusing him. I despise the guy, but that's not my point. Joe Biden knows her husband's not up to this job. All the people who surround him, from the press secretaries, whether it's the idiot or the other idiot, Kirby, they all know this. The cabinet knows it. The vice president knows it. The media know it. Everybody in and around that White House know it, and we know it. And the 25th Amendment is supposed to address something like this. The vice president and the cabinet are supposed to step up, but they're not stepping up. They're circling the wagons, as I said on television. So we have no way of addressing this other than the November election, and they're doing everything they can to protect him from us. This is why the Attorney General of the United States asked Biden to issue an executive order to protect Biden and him, because they don't want you to hear the audio of the text of his interviews several months ago with the special counsel. They don't want you to hear it. They put out the text so we know the words word for word. They do not want you to hear it. Why? Because it'll be obvious that he's in stage 6, either Alzheimer's or dementia. And for these purposes, it doesn't matter. one from the other. The Democrat Party is going to nominate an individual for president of the United States who's in the later stages of dementia. This isn't a joke. It's not funny. I've had members of my family who've suffered from this. It is horrendous. And I would defend them and protect them as I always have. I certainly wouldn't suggest that they should be running for any office, let alone president of the United States. But the American people have a right to know, and the American people have a right to make a decision, not an assumption. And this is why we're supposed to have a free press. And this is why we have a 25th Amendment. But the Democrat Party and their media and their functionaries don't care. They don't care. It's power first. Power first, under any and all circumstances. The world is laughing at us. This is the humiliation. In addition to all these substantive problems and issues, this is the most complicated, difficult, stressful office on the face of the world. And we have a right to know who else is running this government. Because Joe Biden is incapable on his own of running anything. Anything. Even a small grocery store with a cash register. You know damn well he couldn't run that. He couldn't use a cash register or a calculator. I doubt he writes his own checks. And so we're now supposed to accept this lie, this abomination, this camouflage, this deceit as acceptable. And so they have to paint Donald Trump as a criminal, as Hitler. They have to take a video that has the word Reich, that his people didn't even put in there intentionally. And they have to make you believe he's Hitler in order to try and convince people who are unbelievably still on the fence to vote for Biden. The 7 stages of dementia. Joe Biden's in stage 6, heading for stage 7. He will not finish his presidency if he's reelected, God forbid, for the United States of America. He will not finish it. His party knows it. His surrogates know it. The media know it. And it's fine by them. It's okay by them if Kamala's the next president. They don't care. We care. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, there's Jen Psaki, who they keep promoting on MSNBC. She knows Biden is not qualified to be president of the United States. They just keep lying to us. Unfortunately, I had to go quickly through some of this testimony today with Blinken. It's a rarity that he actually gets in front of a committee. And so I want to circle back briefly. I've got so much here, but I don't want to just race through this. Ted Cruz dealing with Blinken before the Senate committee today. Let's start with Let's go back to 4, Mr. Producer. Go.
Senator Barrasso asked you about Ibrahim Raisi. Your State Department put out a statement sending condolences for his death. Mr. Secretary, is the world better today now that Raisi is dead?
Given the horrible acts that he engaged in, both as a judge and as president, to the extent he can no longer engage in them, yes, the Iranian people are probably better off.
You didn't say that in your statement, did you?
I believe that we did. And certainly our spokesperson...
Today, the United Nations is flying their flag at half-staff to mourn the death. Would you agree that it is utterly disgraceful for the United Nations to be mourning the death of the butcher of Tehran?
We're certainly not mourning his death. As I said, we expressed...
Would you agree it's disgraceful for the UN to be?
I'll look at what they've done. We certainly would not do that.
What they've done is flown the flag at half-staff. Is that disgraceful?
We wouldn't do that, and we would certainly find that.
And I would note that's the absence of American leadership.
Cut 5, go.
How many Ghost Fleet ships did Iran have in November 2020?
We have sanctioned more than 200
It's a question.
of those.
I'm not. How many did they have?
The total number, I can't tell you what it had in 2021. I'll come back to you with that. But we have
the number was about 70.
Yeah,
how many did they have today?
We blocked about 50 of them.
Okay, let's see how effective you are. How many do they have today?
As I said, we blocked about 50.
How many do they have today?
You tell me. I'm sure you.
They have about over 400. Look, this administration desperately wants a new Iran deal. You have been showering cash on Iran from day one. And understand, the $6 billion you were asked about is the tip of the iceberg. By refusing to enforce oil sanctions, we have seen Iran's oil sales go from 300,000 barrels a day when you got into office to over 2 million barrels a day today. That's $80 billion. 90% of Hamas's funding comes from Iran in a very real sense. This administration, you and President Biden, funded the October 7th attacks by flowing $100 billion to a homicidal...
That a boy. Amen to that, Ted. And this guy needs to hear this over and over and over again, this Blinken. I've got more. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the great one.
The great one, Mark Levin.
Dial in now, 877-381-3811.
All right, folks, I want you to hear one more. Pete Ricketts, Republican Nebraska, with Blinken. Then we'll move along. Cut 7, go.
How is putting more pressure on Israel helping? How is that helping them win this conflict against what you described yourself as a terrorist organization and an enemy?
Not a question of putting pressure on them. It's a question when your close friend is going down a path that you think may be counter to its interests and potentially our own as well.
First of all, let's stop right there. What an arrogant SOB. Don't you folks think, not you, I know you do, I'm talking about them, that the Israelis know what's in their best interest? It's their lives, it's their country. They've had to put up with this since the state was created, since they've been in existence. Don't they realize that Israel knows better than they do? And they just think, oh, well, it's Netanyahu. No, it's not just Netanyahu. And even if it was, he's their elected prime minister. But listen to the arrogance of this a-hole. He's never run for anything. He's never been elected in anything. He's weaseled his way up the ladder with Biden from the Senate to Deputy Secretary of State under Obama, to Secretary of State under Biden. Go ahead.
Relations with them. That's what we're supposed to do. That's the nature of the relationship. We have a better way of dealing with the ongoing problem that Hamas represents in Gaza and in Rafah specifically.
So what kind of pressure are you putting on Hamas?
Oh, what kind of pressure are we putting on Hamas?
When's the last time you called for Hamas to surrender?
Virtually every day.
No, you don't. No, you're such a liar. I guess diplomacy has become the art of lying. Have you heard him put pressure on Hamas every day, Mr. Producer? I think if somebody did a search just in the last, since October 7th, of how many times he's said something negative about Netanyahu, and same with Biden, versus the head of Hamas. They barely even mention this guy, Sinwar, and the others. Go ahead.
I have said, Senator, that the single quickest way to end this is for Hamas
that's
to surrender.
enough. I can't take this fool anymore. But the key there in the Ricketts questioning is the arrogance of this SOB. It's just incredible. We have a better way. You have no way. You armed them. Cruz is right. You funded them. Pretty sick. Now, our friend James O'Keefe. You notice how people don't talk about James O'Keefe as much as they used to, Mr. Producer? What's that all about? What's that all about? He comes under attack, so we abandon him? I'm not abandoning him. I like him. Guy's gutsy. Who is Sterling Waters? Anybody know who Sterling Waters is? I didn't. But thanks to James O'Keefe, I do now. He's the policy advisor, one anyway, of the National Security Council, your National Security Council. He's a policy advisor. And so we have an undercover video with O'Keefe Media Group, So remember, this is a policy advisor to the National Security Council, Sterling Waters. And isn't it amazing? Maybe you've heard it on a few other shows, but you certainly haven't heard this in many places. And yet it explains a lot. Cut 13, nice and loud, Mr. Producer. Go.
You're not going to continue to lie and bomb and kill all these kids without facing serious consequences. But that is a second-term decision, Ben, but not a first.
So stop right there. So Waters is saying you're not going to continue to lie and bomb and kill all these kids without facing serious consequences. Ready? But that is a second-term decision bandwidth, not a first term, you know? So this is what the second term of Biden, it's across the board. They have a zillion executive orders ready, a zillion regulations ready. They've got a zillion attacks on our allies, including and especially Israel, waiting. They're going to unleash their Department of Justice like you haven't even seen yet. They're just, in their view, they're holding back and waiting. They're waiting to convince as many of you as he can to vote for Biden because he's not Hitler. Go ahead.
I say now we should probably lose support from the Jews.
Enough support that we can't get 270 electoral votes. There are political calculations that are being made that I'm not making. There are, you know, whether how do you if Biden won again, he could be much more forthright about saying no. Like, it's such a political risk to even say what Biden said earlier this week. Like, we're not going to give you more bombs.
We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used.
The Pentagon confirmed a U.S. shipment of 3,500 bombs was paused.
So he has to keep things quiet for now.
Yeah.
Are you under Jake Sullivan, like right under him?
So he's the National Security Advisor. My boss is the Deputy National Security Advisor. But she's the Deputy National Security Advisor for cyber. Cyber has become so important that we have a deputy who's and so I'm under her.
All right, let me read this so you can understand exactly. This is stunning. This is news breaking. And I want to salute the O'Keefe Media Group. This is what 60 Minutes used to do. So this guy, Sterling Waters, is a policy advisor, National Security Council. By his own admission, he's a third-level guy, which is huge. He reports to a deputy national security advisor. He's a senior official. He says, you're not going to continue to lie and bomb, he's talking about Israel, and kill all these kids without facing serious consequences. But that is a second-term decision bandwidth, not a first term, you know. Journalist. So we can't say now because you will probably lose support. Waters. Yes. Journalist. From the Jews. Waters. Enough support that we can't get 270 electoral votes. There are political calculations that are being made that I'm not making, you know, how do you, like if Biden won again, he could be much more forthright about saying, no, it's such a political risk to even say what Biden said earlier this week, like, well, what did he say? We're not going to give you more bombs. So he has to keep things quiet for now. Yes. Are you under Jake Sullivan? Like, actually under him? Hold on, turning the page. So he's the National Security Advisor. My boss is the Deputy National Security Advisor, but she's the Deputy National Security Advisor for cyber. Cyber has become so important that we have a deputy who's like, you know, and I am under her. Can we post this, Mr. Producer, on all our social platforms? You see, Trump is right, and I've been saying it too, but Trump is right. He's got guts. I'm not running for president. He is. If you're Jewish and you vote for Biden, you're suicidal. This regime is filled with Islamists and Marxists and Jew haters. Filled with them. Apologists for Hamas. Look at what they do, not what they say. But you can listen to what they say, too. They put out condolences to the butcher of Tehran. The condolences. And they won't even meet with Netanyahu? They're trying to topple him? Can you imagine what will happen to this country 4 more years of this? Can you imagine what will happen to Israel 4 more years of this? People better wake the hell up. And then you have people like Joe Scarborough, who is so desperate that they have destroyed any credibility they have. Now, they're grifters. So they only care about the little niche audience they have and the paycheck they're getting. But Joe Scarborough doesn't understand that outside the MSNBC building in New Jersey, or in his case, he and Mika in Florida, wherever they are, and people who are sycophants, the vast majority of people think he's a complete buffoon. And he seems to want to prove it every damn show. You know, I told you I met him on an airplane. Couldn't have been nicer. I was nice. He was nice. Very sensible. And then he goes on this show and he's lost his mind. I don't get it. But the things they have to say constantly. First of all, let's go to Biden accuses Trump of Nazism over this ad that I talked about. The Reich ad, the unified Reich, Mediaite, of all pathetic, disgusting, in the bag for Biden and the Democrats' sites. They apparently have a couple of people who actually try to do a good job. And to their credit, to their credit, they uncovered what really took place here, which was nothing intentional, nothing with forethought. I don't even quite get it, but I get what they wrote, which is there's this system in place where you subscribe. All these companies subscribe, Blaze and the Daily this and the Daily that and so forth. We get access to old video, old newspaper covers, all stuff like. And so at the bottom of the one of them, it talked about unified Reich. But it had nothing to do with Hitler and the Third Reich. It had to do with World War I. And as Mediaite points out, the German Empire starting in 1871. And the Biden campaign jumps all over this, says, see that? This is the second term. Hitler, a Third Reich. That's what Trump wants. What kind of a campaign is this, America? And George Stephanopoulos runs with all the media, ran with all of them. And notice tonight, they're not saying much about it, are they, Mr. Producer? Oops. They don't apologize. Look, I have a lot of integrity. That's why I cite Mediaite, even though I despise them. I cite them. They deserve the credit. They did the right thing. They did the right thing. Here's Biden accuses Trump of Nazism over this. Hat tip right scoop cut 15 go.
What happens after Donald Trump wins? What's next for America? The economy booms. American energy is unleashed and an end to crushing taxes. The border is closed and the largest deportation in history is underway. No more wars as we focus on home. Law and order is restored. The American dream is back and the best is yet to come. Make America great again.
Well, this is the Trump ad, and it's a great ad. But they don't have original photographs, graphics, and videos. Nobody does. And so they use them. They lace them within the video and so forth. And that's what they did here. And it had nothing to do with Hitler, nothing to do with the Third Reich, nothing whatsoever. But the Biden campaign said it did. So, of course, there's Stephanopoulos. He won't apologize tomorrow. And he's not alone. Every one of the networks, and of course MSNBC and CNN, ran with it. Every damn one of them. Because that's who they are. That's why you hate them and you have to reject them. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Quickly, before we end, the Associated Press, Joe Biden releasing 1 million more barrels of gasoline from Northeast Reserve in bid to lower prices at the pump. You know, ladies and gentlemen, it takes a generation to fill up these emergency storage facilities. And this is a one in the Northeast, a reserve established after Superstorm Sandy to lower prices at the pump or to make gas available if we have a massive natural disaster. Joe Biden's already tapped into the Superfund. It's at its lowest level in modern history. It was Donald Trump who filled it up when prices were low. Joe Biden has brought it way, way down. Now he's tapping into this other reserve. The Northeast Reserve is what it's called. That's for the northeastern United States if there's another massive event, like a hurricane or so forth. They have storage sites in New Jersey and Maine. They're going to take 1 million barrels of gasoline out ahead of July 4th to try and fool you. It's taken them 10 years to fill the damn thing. Because Joe Biden steals from past generations to buy your votes. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers. Thank you. We stand with the people in Ukraine. We stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel. And more than anything else, I want to thank you, red-blooded Americans. God bless each and every one of you. And I'll see you tomorrow.